Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, everybody who is a fan of the No Contest Wrestling Podcast, welcome to another Monday episode. I am the heel that you love to hate, O'Shea Jackson Jr., a.k.a. Petty Guerrero.
Hey, yo, it's me. It's that T-O-O, the J-I-G-G, TJ Jefferson.
And it is today. Today is a pretty weird day in wrestling because it's May 19th. May 19th.
We don't have Kane coming out.
No, we don't have Kane. We don't have Kane coming on, but you're rocking something today, something special that you wanted to touch on.
Yeah, as you can see, I'll move the microphone real quick.
Yes, sir. Man.
Let them know. So I've got on a Shad Gaspard T-shirt, and those of you that know that Shad passed away 5 years ago on, I believe it was Saturday. If you recall, Shad was part of Crime Time, just a great WWE tag team who, had something go with John Cena at that point. And we thought at that moment when they're working with Cena, we thought Crime Time was just, they were going up. And then, whatever happened, they got broken up, and then, things happened. He and JTG both left WWE. Shad started an acting career, and he was a guy who, I'll say this, about 12 to 15 years ago, time has just gone by so fast. It's hard to remember exactly when, but my buddy John Piermarini and I've mentioned him to you before. He's a friend of mine. We met at MTV. I was working on Punk'd. He was working on Pimp My Ride. And you probably have many friendships like this. You're in the hallways at work or school, and you hear somebody go, "Hey, so-and-so likes wrestling." Yeah. And then you meet and you become a friend. And that's kind of what it was. I had people at MTV going, "Yeah, the homeboy that works at Pimp My Ride likes wrestling too. He heard about me. We met in the hallways of MTV once, and boom, we became friends." So John then became a writer for WWE, and he was there for about 2-3 years. And then after he was done, he started working on a little blog. He started writing a blog about his experiences, which picked up a little traction back then. And it made John and I decide to do a wrestling podcast back in, 2000, I want to say 9, 10, before wrestling podcasts truly became what they are today. There's so many. And John and I needed a guest. We needed a first guest. So he goes, "I know who will answer my call." And it was Shad Gaspard. And Shad took the time, man. He spent about an hour and a half chopping it up with John and I. And, it was just a really fun, great interview. And we never did anything with it. It was the first one we shot. The first interview, I had the copy of it and just kind of sat on it for a while, for years and years. And I actually found this thing on a hard drive a few months ago. And, it's something that maybe one day I was thinking about releasing it. But I thought maybe the cool thing to do would be to one day give this interview to his son and his wife, and then let them kind of decide what they want to do with the interview. If they want to put it out there, if they don't. I remember specifically there was a part of the interview that I told Chris Jericho I would get to him, where Shad basically said Chris Jericho was the man because there were rumors that Shad was hard to work with. And the story goes that Jericho stepped up and goes, "Let me get in the ring with him." And then coming out of their match, Jericho came back and apparently was like, "Yo, if anyone's got a problem with Shad, then that's on you, because he can work." And Shad said that changed everything for him. So I remember talking to Chris Jericho about this back in 2020, right before the pandemic happened. And I was like, "I'll get a clip of this to you." But then the pandemic happened.
Yeah.
And, you know what happened. Then life kind of just got weird. But, Shad, unfortunately, as many of you know, he passed away on Venice Beach. He was with his son. Being a hero. He and his son got caught in, I guess, a riptide. The word is that the rescuers came and Shad made sure that they got to his son first, which unfortunately left him stranded, and he got sucked in this riptide. And, I can remember the night, man, because it was a big story. I live near Venice Beach, so it was all over the news, like, a body had washed up, and unfortunately it was Shad Gaspard. And the man truly died a hero. And it's just, one of those just sad tales, because he left the son, he left the wife behind. And, his life, he had a lot going on, man. He was started to get into movies. I actually met him, I think, Terminator 4, Terminator Genesis was a premiere that was at Man's Chinese, and I happened to meet him after we shot our interview, and I kind of reintroduced myself, and we had a great time. We chopped it up for about half an hour, 40 minutes, and by all accounts, he was just like a great dude, a great husband, a great father, and just such a sad loss. But, you know, I know I just wanted to pay my respects to the man who, like I said, was truly, truly a hero.
Yeah, that's well said. And when it comes to wrestling, there are so many other things that take stars away from us. And I know, being a father myself, if there is a way to go out as a father and it's saving your child, you know, that is heroics beyond belief. So, you know, that well said, tag team partner.
Yeah, just it's still sad, you know, because you watch. He was very big on social media. You'd see the videos of him and his son training.
Yeah, he had so much more to do.
Had so much more. And he had his son in the gym and working out, and you know, you could see that father-son relationship was real, man. And he loved his son loved him, and you know, and I think that's, you know, what's even more sad, because, you know, we spoke with AJ Francis. A lot of times, black males get that you know, reputation or that thing of not being there.
Absentee
fathers. And there, you know, you got a perfect example of a man who was truly in his son's life and, you know, raising him the right way. And just to see him kind of lose his life in the way he did, man, it's hard. You know? It's sad to see. And, you know, WWE put him, I guess, in a wing of the Hall of Fame. And a lot of people think that there should be some type of award named after him. And I absolutely fully am on board with that. But, you know, if you're not familiar, man, go back, check out some Crime Time videos. Yeah. You know, they were a riot. They were a riot, man. They were funny. Him and JTG, money. Yeah. You know, and so just wanted to say that and pay our respects to a true warrior. This was a real life tough guy. He was a bodyguard. He was, you know, he was a boxer, was a mixed martial artist. Like Shad Gaspard was one of those legit tough guys who, you know, if he was around today, you definitely want him on your bar fight team. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So
absolutely.
This is to pay our respects.
This is the second week in a row where we've had to kind of bring up, you know, this Sabu was more recent, but this is the second time of us kind of dealing with death in the No Contest Wrestling Podcast. I think we need to figure out something special. We can't do a 10 bell salute, right? But like, we need to do something for our pod for these souls that have gone on in the wrestling business. I think it'll be nice. But well said, TJ. In the building, we have wrestling royalty right here. Okay, my man is a multiple-time champion. He's been around the world, and a New York Times best-selling author and quite the puppeteer. All right. Mrs. Foley's baby boy,
yes, sir.
Mick Foley. Welcome to the pod.
I appreciate
man.
it. As you're saying that, I'm thinking of the guy like the Pinocchio, like the strangers. And I'm like, I think O'Shea's got the wrong information. Like,
man.
Sock puppet, sock puppet,
not Geppetto.
Yeah. So I mean, you're a man of many faces, obviously, but the first one was Dude Love.
Dude, yeah.
Dude Love. So can you take us back a little bit? When did you get bit by the wrestling bug?
Oh, man. I watched it from the time I was probably, 10 years old on, but I would go in phases, where it'd be a big deal and then I'd phase out. But when I hit probably 15 is when I really became obsessed with it.
Yeah.
To the point, I told a story when I did a famous interview with Jim Ross where my brother and I used to wrestle, and the one time I gave him what was kind of like a back body drop into the wall. Like I was sitting on the bed. It wasn't like as sadistic as it sounds. And he came running. I gave him a little lift, and I thought he was, selling. I was like, and he goes, I'm hurt. And I saw his nose is bleeding, so he broke his nose. And my mom came in and said, no more wrestling. And what I said to Jim Ross was, but she didn't say no more dreaming.
Yeah.
So I was constantly thinking about it. It kind of, I don't want to say it overtook my life in a negative way. It became like a rudder for me, like a goal, something to really set my mind on. And I became, really obsessed with it. And the next time I'm on your show, remind me to wear some black socks, okay? This isn't a real good look. This is
Now, can you remember your your welcome to wrestling moment, like a bump you took where you're like, no, this is what we chose to
this
do.
is what I'm gonna
It
be
was
doing.
the very first bump I took. My dad was the athletic director of the entire school district on Long Island, big school district. So they were doing their first ever wrestling fundraiser. And my dad told the promoter that he had a son who was interested in wrestling. The guy said, if he comes down here, I'll talk to him. So I drove down from my college and I helped set up the ring. That was my foot in the door. I set up the ring. And then when no one was around, I was like, let me see what this trampoline thing feels like.
Yeah.
And I gave myself like a header into the turnbuckle and I fell backwards. And all I felt was stars, that aching feeling. And my first thought was, how does anyone do this? Like,
Right.
This is not at all what I thought it would be. And I think that's a lot of people's introduction, especially if they don't know to tuck their chin to their chest. And it's not just it's not just a knowledge. It's like it becomes instinct. Yeah. And if you don't do that, you get the whiplash effect, and you're almost always going to end up with a bad headache, if not a very minor brain injury.
Except when you take the Styles class, then you want to throw your head back, right?
Which class?
The Styles class.
AJ
The AJ
Styles
class.
the Styles class.
That one you don't want to tuck, you want to throw your head back
that's
for
right.
that one. Yeah.
There are variations, but basically,
for the most
tuck
part,
the chin to the chest. And I'm going to break out my theory here on why older guys seem to get hurt more regularly doing typical moves. So when I was growing up, and Ali was like past his prime, right? He was still good, but he wasn't dancing anymore. He was 34 years old, and they were talking about how the legs are the first thing to go on a fighter. And so I think the neck muscles might be the thing to go on a wrestler. So that, like, just Sting taking the buckle bomb from Seth Rollins. Ordinarily, young and strong, your chin stays to your chest, and there's no big deal. But anytime you lose that, you get this feeling. Yeah. And it puts a strain on your neck. It hurts your head. I believe that's why I may have gotten like a little, very, when I say minor, nothing's minor when you talk about your head. But even after I took the rock bottom from The Rock, when we intentionally did the worst segment possible, which is This Your Life, John Cena. Like, I'd been away for 3 years, and on its surface, I was like, should I really be coming back to intentionally do a terrible segment? Or should I hold out for something else? I was like, no, I'm gonna play nice. I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna do it rotten like it's supposed to be. But when I took the rock bottom, which is a move I'd taken, dozens and dozens of times, I just felt a little weird the next few days, and I thought maybe I don't know how to tuck my chin to my chest anymore. So that's just my theory. That Undertaker, when he got concussed at Mania, you get guys who are in their 40s and 50s who are just not recovering from moves they used to do daily when they were in their 20s and 30s. Just my theory. I can't prove it.
It's a solid theory.
I mean, if Mick Foley has a theory on anything wrestling related, I'm going to take your word for it.
Yeah.
Speaking of wrestling related and having that love for the wrestling bug, you were in the building that night in Madison Square Garden.
Yeah.
Jimmy Snooka against the magnificent Morocco, famous for the Superfly splash off of the top of the cage. Can you reminisce a little bit about that?
Yeah. I'd been watching, I think it was a year before, when Snooka took off from the top of the cage against Bob Backlund.
One of my earliest wrestling memories that I can remember.
I believe Randy Savage was doing elbows off the top of steel cages in the middle of nowhere, in Kentucky and Tennessee. I'm not saying all of Kentucky and Tennessee are in the middle of nowhere, but they were working a lot of small towns, like everyone's proud to. I've worked hundreds of small towns. So I'd hear rumors that Savage would be dropping these amazing elbows. So it's possible that the best of Randy Savage was only seen by a few hundred people a night, which is crazy and shows you what kind of a, competitor. When I say competitor, I mean, we compete with ourselves, with each other in the dressing room. But I didn't know that. I only knew that seeing Snooka leap off the top of the cage was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. Yeah. So I had attended their first, Morocco and Snooka had this great build-up. And one of the things that was cool about it was that we never found out what Morocco said. He said something that set Snooka off, and then Snooka did a dive over the top rope, which people hadn't seen at that point. And he had this way of just shifting gears where he looked like he just lost his mind. Like, when he was enraged, he was a really dangerous guy, which may have had some, you didn't mess with Snooka, right? Bottom
That's
line.
a dark side episode.
Yeah. There's a story about police dogs coming, and there are various stories over the years of guys needing large numbers of law enforcement to settle them down. But when I just had this feeling like he's going to take flight, and so I talked about this. I wrote about it in the first book, Have a Nice Day, about how the plan was for my parents to drop us off at the bus station, and then they were going to go drive to Indiana to visit my brother in college. Me and my friend Scott Dara were going to just hang out. We were going to go down a little bank and hang out until everything was clear, and then we were going to go to Madison Square Garden the next night. And then Scott says, your parents are here. I was like, what do you mean my parents are here? And we look out, and my mom and dad were scoping out the area. When I asked them later, they said, you were just in way too big of a hurry for us to leave. And they suspected, they knew how important this match was to me. And so what I ended up doing is I got a little trepidatious. I took the bus back to Cortland, New York. And then that next day I was like, am I really going to let this set me back? Just because I had to take a bus back? No, I'm going back, to New York. I hitchhiked. I hitchhiked to Madison Square Garden. I think I got a bus ride about 100 miles. I can't remember if I got a bus ride 40 miles to Binghamton, whatever the case was. But it was a lot of hitchhiking. And because it was a solo ticket, I got a really good seat.
Oh, right.
Really good seat. And I was there when it took place. And the biggest.
And how old were you at this point, man?
I was 18.
Okay.
18.
Okay.
I was 18 years old. Scalped that ticket, was in the flannel, saw him do his thing. But the cool thing for me is that when he took flight, I was watching when he took flight, but as soon as he landed, I just spun around because I've always been interested in reactions, even more than the actions. And there's this amazing, have you seen The Green Mile?
Yeah.
Green Mile is the only movie that actually makes me cry. Not fight back tears, but actually cry. And the thing is, I know what they're doing to me, and they get me every time. It's that scene with Dell's mouse.
Oh,
remember that guy Percy stomps
on the mouse.
Little fellow's spine. He's dead.
Yeah.
And then John Coffey says, "Bring him to me, boss."
Yeah.
And it's really emotional. You see the little fellow's tail wriggling, but it's not until they cut to the reaction shot of David Morse, who's a great character actor, and he mouthed the words, "Jesus Christ."
Yeah.
And it's like the reaction to the miracle that's happening that gets me. So with that in mind, I turned around to look at the fans, and it was like this sense of community there. Like New York City, Madison Square Garden used to be a lot tougher place as far as fans in general. There wasn't families, and there weren't many families at that time. And New York, filled with tough people. And yet you had people crying and strangers hugging each other. And I remember thinking wow, one day I'd like to make people feel the way that I feel right now. And that became like a career goal and a defining moment in my life.
Wow.
Absolutely. I sometimes the way that I describe you is that you're the embodiment of for the love of the game. Just for the love of the game.
Yeah.
And you've never shied away from putting people over, and you've always come up with some crazy scheme to steal the show. Steal the show. Has there ever been something in creative that you had to tell them nah, I'm not doing that? Or has there also, I should say, has there been times where other wrestlers are like, Mick?
Well, with the other wrestlers, it was, Undertaker for a better part of 10 days to 2 weeks, just shooting down this idea of me starting the match on top of the cell.
Yeah, that seems like good advice.
I've had people say, well, why did you have to ask him? And I go, it's live TV. If I climb up there and he doesn't follow me, you're looking at the worst match in the history of wrestling. So I needed his approval. And finally, the day before we took our 3-day break, meaning the day before we the last time I saw Taker before we showed up in Pittsburgh, he just said, "Why are you so intent on killing yourself?" Yeah. And then I told him, like, I can't do what you and Sean did. Like, and if it had just been me and Taker and we'd never had a match, might have been different, but we had this legacy, right? We'd had, I think, 10 televised matches, 6 or 7 pay-per-view matches, and we had wrestled all over the country and parts of the world. And I didn't want to embarrass what we had done. You know, like there may have been some other times where it was like, okay, I'm content just to have a good match. I'm not going to try to upstage what the 2 amazing people did before me. But in this case, like what they did was so good. And because my actual physical gifts are so limited, like, like I had, a cell is made for people who can pull their body up, like not a guy who maxed out in 6th grade gym class with 4 pull-ups, like that it was never my atmosphere. I could never do cool stuff. And so I go back to my old adage that I can't jump high, but I can jump from high places. Yeah. I thought if we can use that cell to our advantage, that could really work out. But I'll tell you one time, you'd be surprised when I said no, was actually on the Jimmy Kimmel show.
Oh, nice.
I said, back when he had co-hosts for the week, and he explained to me that it was tough to book guests because you didn't know which co-hosts were going to work with you. I knew from wrestling that it's Jimmy's show. I'm here to help him. Yeah. I'm not here to try to overshadow Jimmy Kimmel on the Jimmy Kimmel show. Not that I could if I wanted to anyway. But there were other people who didn't know that. And they would talk over the guests, and I guess it was pretty hard to book people. But they wanted me taking a chair shot with, like a gimmick chair. The problem was the edges of the chair weren't gimmicked, like the lip. Yeah. And the lip is usually what does the damage, And he goes, "No, it's not going to hurt." And I go, "What if he hits me with this part?" He goes, "What do you mean?" I go, "It'll split me open like a can of sardines on your show." Does he have any experience doing this? No. I said, I can't do it. Yeah. So it wasn't like I was crazy and just saying, "I'll do whatever you want me to do." Yeah. It's kind of half joking that I've labeled my ability to tell what I can and can't do the instantaneous Foley risk-reward ratio analysis. But I can pretty much sum up. Now, that's an easy one. I've got a day to think about it. But, I mean, when I was in the ring, there would be things that would cross my mind, and there would be things I wouldn't do because they didn't pass the test. Yeah. But I think a good case in point is when Triple H and I had our New York City street fight, and I had taken the thumbtacks had backfired on me, as they often did, right? I ended up in them, took a back body drop in them. And so they're there for the taking. We've already blatantly defied Mr. McMahon, who said, in no uncertain terms, no thumbtacks. So it's not like we're going to get in more trouble. But I remember thinking like, okay, the Foley instantaneous reward analysis was, I could lose an eye. But think of the pop. And so if you go back and watch that, the form could not have been any better. Yeah. And all I did, I turned my face, you have to turn your face, land on your nose, your teeth, your jaw. And I closed my eye as tightly as I could. And I had a few tacks around there, but nothing that was threatening. And then that pop was definitely worth it, right? Right. But there were times when I was like, no, I can't do that. And a lot of times the ideas that I came up with were only made because I could not do plan A, physically couldn't do it. So when when young wrestlers ask me for advice, one of the things I sometimes tell them is have a plan B. Yeah. If you don't feel like you can do something safely or effectively, something that looks good, propose something else that almost always is going to make the other person look good, so you have very little chance. No one shoots down ideas that are there to make them look good, right? No. I'll give you an example. I went to Japan. I only had 2 matches for FMW, 2 of their anniversary shows. The group I worked for was IWA Japan, same type of organization, blood and guts. And for the second year I showed up and I wrestled a guy named Wing Kenimura. And I'm a guy that likes to have a lot of input into the match. And this young man had written 5 or 6 notebook pieces of paper. He'd obviously put a lot of work into it. Yeah. And I looked at it and I looked at it and I thought to myself, I can't top this. Like everything he's doing is designed to make me look good. Like if I proposed the match, it would have been a different match,
right? Because
he would have shown more. But by doing this match and putting it together, it's the only match I've ever had where I just went. First of all, we didn't used to work off of. We didn't. We just had ideas, and didn't mean we wouldn't have stuff planned. But as far as A to Z on paper, that was the only time I'd ever done it. But it was such a good match that I felt like I'd be doing Wing Kenamura a big disservice if I stepped in just on principle to change things.
Hey, 5 to 6 pages,
quite a lot.
Because I remember. When I would think of matches, I wouldn't write things down, but I'd have them in my head. That I probably, for example, thought about my Beach Blast match with Sting for 3 weeks to a month before it took place, just in my mind. And then when it becomes real in your head, it's just a matter of making it happen in the ring. And sometimes that's easier than others. But if you've got some good ideas and they come about and you feel it happening, it's a rush. It's definitely a rush.
Amazing. I want to take you back. It's something you mentioned. June 28th, 1998.
Yeah.
Hell in a Cell. Now, it's at the Pittsburgh Civic Arena. I'm from Pittsburgh.
Really?
I'm supposed to go to the match that night.
Yeah.
And what happened is, and I've told this story on the show before, one of my buddies, his brother had one of those cheater boxes.
Yeah.
So a couple of the fellas wanted to come up to my apartment. I lived on Mount Washington in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
They decided.
No city like Pittsburgh.
I loved it.
As soon as you're there, you're like, wow.
Especially when you come through the tunnel when you get in from the airport.
It's just a different, every great city's got a unique feel to it, but Pittsburgh for sure.
So, all of a sudden these guys decide they want to watch Hell in a Cell. And I'm like, all right, well, if all the boys want to come over, I wanted to go to the match, but all right, I'll save some money and we'll just get it at home. And I was telling O'Shea, like, to this day, I'm not sure how I feel about it, because I could have been in the building for literally one of the greatest moments in wrestling history. But also I'm at home with my boys. And had I not been home, I would have missed out on the Jim Ross call.
Yeah.
I would have missed out on knowing that if I'm there, I'm thinking Mick is really dead.
Yeah, it's a different ballgame.
Being at home, you really got the benefit of having the replays, kind of getting to see things over and over, while, if you're there, you just got that one shot, and now you're in the Civic Arena, like, what happened? Like, what's going on? So I struggle with the fact that I missed it, but like almost being at home and hearing Jim Ross, like, that call, good God Almighty, as God is my witness, he's broken in half.
I'm a huge fan of the classic sports calls.
Yeah.
And to me, Jim Ross's call is every bit as good, if not better, than the Giants win the pennant and Do You Believe in Miracles?
Yeah.
Those are two of the greatest calls of all time.
And it's become a bigger part of popular culture. Like every time a team goes down 3-0 in the World Cup, up pop the meme saying, will somebody stop the damn match? Enough is enough. And I tell you, the JR call to me is so powerful that one of the most emotional experiences regarding the Cell is I've been on radio stations a couple times where they'll play just the call.
Yeah.
And I get goosebumps. Even though I know what happens, like I said, it's like that Green Mile. I know what happens. Yeah. I know the call. I was in the match, and I get goosebumps just listening to JR call that match. And King was on top of his game, too.
Yeah, have to shout out to King. They both. And like I said, they really kept us informed in a way that you wouldn't get in the arena.
Yeah.
Mick, how did you get up? Like, you're getting wheeled off.
How is such a perfect word?
I don't even know if I want to say how or why. Like, because at the point we're sitting there, you get up.
This is after I was thrown off the first time?
After you're thrown off the first time, so they load you onto the stretcher, and now we're all like, oh my God, what is going on? They start to wheel you away, and now, having watched, many, many documentaries and videos, it's like you were asking questions, you were kind of awake, and then you jumped off the stretcher and then began to climb back up. Like, what was your mindset?
Well, the funny thing was only 3 people knew, me, Undertaker, and Mr. McMahon. So we never clued in the EMTs. No one ever clued in the EMTs. So they only found out in real time that the gurneys didn't have room to get down
through.
there. And that's why the cell structure starts raising
With Taker up top.
on top of it.
Yeah.
Starts ascending towards the heavens. I've never talked to Taker about what he was thinking when that thing started going, because that wasn't something that was talked about. But I did tell him, like, I don't know if I'll be able to, but if I can, you know, we assumed they were going to come down with, you know, stretcher, gurney, whatever. We just never talked to the medical people. I said, I don't know if I can, but if I'm able to, I'm going to roll off that gurney. And I believe I said, I'm going to climb that son of a bitch again, you know, like, and there's a couple of regrets I have. One is that I did not try to climb the cell earlier in the day, as I promised Taker and Mr. McMahon I had, because if I had, I would have been like, guys, I can't climb it. Like, my feet don't fit in. You know, so if you look at every subsequent cell match there's ever been, they always have the holes.
That's because of you.
I was having so much trouble. Like, I'm like, I don't think I can make it. My feet were slipping off the cell. And one of the saving grace I had was that I was holding onto the wire, the mesh, so tightly that when I got up to the cell, the fact that I couldn't feel a few of my fingers took my mind off, you know, the peril that awaited me. Right. And then when I had a chance, as soon as Taker's music started, I was like, okay, nobody's looking at me. Let me see what I got myself into. And I looked over that edge. Oh, I don't know if you know this, I rarely curse, right, in real life, but I do think in curses. Yeah. And all I was doing was dropping that F-bomb in my head. You can say it. Nah, only for this. When I do the one-man show, I use one F-bomb a night. Okay. Yeah. And if I tease it a little bit like it's a finishing move, it's so gratifying when I hit it. Like in Pittsburgh, I just did my one-man show in Pittsburgh, and it's, you know, always been my best town. Get a standing ovation in front of a few hundred people. It feels like you're in the middle of Madison Square Garden.
Or the Pittsburgh Civic Arena.
Yeah, it does. It does, except there's no late-night emergency room.
What made you, like, Mick, what would make you think that, you know what, Mark, just throw me off of this,
love of the game,
and I'll land on the table. Yeah. What would make you think to do that?
I think O'Shea's right, for love of the game.
For love of the game.
I look, there wasn't as much to do. You know, I like the freedom of being around the ring, and I would call them the toys. I never call them weapons. The procession of the toys, and hopefully the second object would be more menacing than the first, and you know, try to have some rhyme and reason to it while creating like a weird piece of surreal art. Because art can be whatever you want it to be. Like, I still don't get the whole Jackson Pollock just throwing crazy. Looks like a third grader could do it. But if you say it's art, I'm going to respect. You know, people see Van Gogh and go, it's either the greatest thing they've ever seen, or like, well, he's a little heavy on those brush strokes. You know, like I don't know if a Van Gogh would sell today. You know, so art is what you decide it is, and you know, I consider what we do to be a unique form of art, and part of the way that I tried to thrive was by creating moments in time. Like, I didn't have at my disposal enough physical tools to have that out-and-out classic match, like a Kurt Angle and Shawn Michaels. You know, when they go out, they're just going to have a classic. Yeah, I don't have those tools, so I have to create moments. And to me, I'll take moments over matches anytime. You know, something that sticks in your mind. You might not remember that whole match, but you're going to remember where you were and how you felt when that moment went down.
And I'm a living example of that. As I said, right? Yeah, and then, you know, he comes back up, and then
then you go through it.
which wasn't planned. You know? Although looking back on it, when Taker and I are up there and our feet are sinking into the mesh, like 18 inches. We're lucky we didn't just go right through it together. The two of us together.
You can see the zip ties popping.
That was my thought when I was up on top of there. I was like, you could hear them going, Pew.
Really?
And I'm thinking, I don't recall there being any twist ties when Undertaker and
this is the security we used.
I said, and listen, I love Richie Posner. I was just thinking about Richie on the way over here and how I hadn't seen him in so many years. But I think when I told him I want a little portion of the mesh to give, so that each time Taker choke slams me, a little more is giving, and then eventually he's going to shove me, like this was the visual I had, he's going to shove me down a kind of a man-made rabbit hole. Yeah. And so all he'd have to do is support my legs. I mean, he can do it. He's a big, strong guy. And I'd be flailing with my arms like I was out of control. Okay. And then when the time was right, I'd have to take my own bump on my hands and knees. And that carried a little risk to it. Fully instantaneous risk reward ratio analysis. That's the risk. I'll take that. I'll take that risk. But I did not know, did not even see it in the cards that the moment I hit this thing, all I remember was ting. And then when I came to, I was like, I think I have less teeth than I used to have. There's this pair of sneakers here, and I have no idea how they got there. That was Terry Funk buying me time. And I thought, there's a lot of twist ties.
Yeah. Obviously, you fall the chair.
Oh, yeah.
That is the worst part of everything, right?
Yeah, because I threw the chair up there to start the match, had it up there. I used it on the I hit him in the back once, maybe twice, but the chair served its purpose. I didn't know it had a higher purpose. And that higher purpose was to follow me down when I was chokeslammed. Like, it was just like a foot away from me. And then when I landed, it hit me in the face. And then, you can see the bottom teeth. The thing about the bottom teeth is they had a dentist on call at the hospital. Saw the dentist 20 years later when I did the 20 Years of Hell show in Pittsburgh. And he was like, I was a dentist on duty on call. He said, there's been an accident at the Pittsburgh Civic Arena. Some teeth were lost. Can you try to see what you could do to salvage them? So right away, they'd put the teeth in a cup of milk, a little container of milk to keep it vital.
Okay.
And when I went to the hospital, I guess they pushed them back, however they do it. So there was 1.5 missing.
All right.
1.5, and they put the one back in. The other half, I turned into an earring or a necklace for my daughter years later, because that's how we roll in the Foley family. We make jewelry from body parts. Yeah. And he asked me, he said, did it start, how long did they last? I figured, about 8-10 years. Yeah. And then they started turning colors. And this is one of those things where guys will say in our business, well, I would do it, but would my character do it? Which is a way of saying I don't want to do it. Right. So I was like, well, Mick Foley, don't have a problem with yellow, bluish, green teeth, but Santa does. So I can't portray Santa and have gnarly teeth, And so I'll tell you both a compliment and maybe a little bit of a diss here. Yeah. As I was like, wow, this show, this is important enough for me to wear my bottom flipper, but I so seldom wear it that it's not comfortable. Yeah. And I had it in for like 5 seconds, like, I'm not wearing the flipper. Yeah. So I did think about it. I rooted against it. But the cool thing, and the only thing that prevents me from getting them fixed, because I know this isn't a great look, It's like my youngest son, Huey, when he was 10, I think he was 10 or 12, he goes, Dad, don't take this the wrong way. First of all, anytime someone says, don't take this the wrong way, but there's going to be something questionable. And he goes, you used to look cool with your top teeth missing. Now you look like a crack addict.
Oh, wow.
No. And I look at him, I said, I believe you're thinking of a meth addict, son, but point well taken. But the thing is, once I fix them, the look is gone. Yeah. Like this is my memento.
Yeah, the badge of honor.
It is the lack of anything is the memorabilia. Yeah. And so I like it. Like, I look in the mirror, I smile, I remember what I did for a living. I'm feeling much better physically than I was a couple of years ago.
That's awesome.
Hip replacement, knee replacement. So it used to be I wake up in the morning and I know what I did. Now it's I smile in the mirror and I know exactly. I don't feel good. If you were to transport a regular guy's body into mine, they'd be like, oh, this is a living, breathing hell. But compared to what I felt like, 7, 8 years ago, so much better. Yeah.
For our pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm gonna put
thank you.
I'm gonna put a pin in the cell because we brought up the teeth, and I gotta ask. Because I watched one of your documentaries. How did you pull such a beautiful wife with no teeth? There's people listening right now that can't do that, Mick. With teeth.
Mick, we were talking about that earlier, and I said, I believe Mick may have been the first person when the phrase was out-punted his coverage. Because Mick, with all due respect, Miss Colette, just a beautiful woman.
I know, and I think I'm happy to say, like, I didn't have much money then. I'd had a 6-month run in WCW. I'd saved some money. I maybe had like 10 grand in the bank. You know, that's not like wealthy.
Well, the word about you was you were a guy who saved all of his money back.
I did,
right?
but I wasn't making enough to save a lot. You know, I mean, I had the 6-month run, and I saved $600-$800 a week out of that. But I was only there for 6 months. You can do the math. That might be 6 times 12 grand, something like that. And she actually liked the way I looked without my top teeth. She said, "Why do you wear that flipper?" At the time, I would only take the flipper out when I wrestled. And she said, I think you look sexy without it. And I was like, well, that's not a word that gets thrown my way too often. So I had a 84 Chrysler LeBaron convertible, right? And this is 1990. So it was the closest to cool that I'd been in a long time. And I had the teeth in the ashtray. And I remember.
Wait, you kept
I kept the flipper, not my real teeth.
in the ashtray.
In the ashtray.
Yeah.
Back when cars had ashtrays.
I assume you weren't smoking.
No, I
then.
wasn't smoking. And I remember the two of us getting in an argument in the car, and I was losing because that's what I do.
I was putting her over.
And then she saw me reach for the ashtray, and she was like, "Don't you do it?" I was like, "Oh, I'm going to do it." Yeah. And I reached over. She was like, "I'm telling you, I'm warning you." And I went, boom, put it in. She was like, fine. Gave me the silent treatment. So that was my finish to that argument as I took my teeth out and put it in. But she thought I looked great, you know. Yeah. I mean, to each their own. Just as we can interpret art, you know, we can interpret attractiveness, right, based on our own personal likes and dislikes.
It's official,
she liked
bro.
the big grizzled guy, you know, and as the big grizzled men ourselves, we appreciate that.
Officially top 10 luckiest in the world. Because there's no way you should be in that situation.
No, definitely not. Definitely
That's
not.
incredible. Now, there was something I was watching where you and Noelle, and Noelle's been cool with me through social media for years.
Yeah, we actually got to meet her a few weeks ago.
Over at Mania weekend. Yeah. And
we should point out, you and I met at Mania.
No, we
met before that.
We met when Fox moved, when SmackDown moved to Fox.
Okay.
Well, let me tell you about that moment real quick. All right, let me break this moment down for you. So we're at Staples Center, crypto now, but it's always Staples Center. So we're at Staples Center, and we're watching, and I feel a tap on my right shoulder, and I turn around. It's Mick Foley, and you told me that you liked movie I did called Long Shot with Seth Rogen and Charlize Theron.
Oh, okay.
And I'm acting real cool, TJ.
How could you not? One of your heroes
I'm
is coming
acting
up.
real cool. My sister is on the left of me. As soon as you left, bro, we turned and looked at each other like, that was Mick Foley. Yeah. I was the coolest big brother for about 2-3 hours. I just want to thank you for that.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, we met at wrestling, man. It was when Brock Lesnar ripped the championship off of Kofi.
Oh, okay.
And we'll talk about that later. But yeah, man, that was good times, and here we are now. But I saw something with you and Noelle where you actually got to touch the cage.
Yeah.
What was that moment? Because it looked like you were going through a lot of thoughts.
Yeah, it was. Man. It was, it was emotional.
Yeah.
My youngest son, Huey, was there, and afterwards, he wasn't, he just came along with us, and Noelle was going with Frank to look at costumes or something. So it was just me and Huey in the car. And I said, yeah, well, I bet you were surprised when I got emotional. He said, yeah, that was so fake. I was like, what do you mean it was fake? And he goes, why would you cry in front of the cell? I said, I don't know. I said, you've seen me try to cry on TV. Yeah. I tried to cry when, Taker came back. I tried to cry, there have been 3-4 times when I tried to cry. And I said, if I could cry on cue, I'd be in Hollywood. Right. And he said, then why'd you get so emotional? I literally yelled, I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. I guess I'm dealing, there's some things I still haven't dealt with. And I did not know we would see the cell there, because I think part of what made that scene effective and memorable is that I was joking around, like for real. Mm-hmm. I was putting on the gobbledygooker suit and I was running around, I'm the gobbledygooker. And then she goes, Dad, and I think she pointed, I didn't even know it was there. And when I walked over, it was like meeting an old friend or rival, and I didn't know how much that night would change my life. And I didn't appreciate how much it changed my life until many years had passed, probably until 2013, when The Undertaker came to one of my events in Austin. He came with his wife, Michelle. He looked at me and goes, Jack, what you and I did that night will outlive us both. And I didn't answer. I just kind of looked at him. He said, people will be talking about that match after you and I are dead and gone. And that's when I realized, like, this is not an imposition for people to ask me if it hurt. This is like an exclamation point on the end of my sentence, and a way to assure that people are handing down what I did to their children to the point where when I go to a Comic-Con, I would say 30 to 40% of the people I see were not even alive when I was wrestling. Wow. And back when I finished wrestling, like YouTube wasn't even a thing. I don't believe. We had DVDs, but there was no network. Netflix didn't carry wrestling. I don't, someone might correct me if I'm wrong, but essentially I felt like I've got a year and a half, a grace period, where what I did will be meaningful.
Resonate.
And here I am 25 years later, never more happy to have been wrong, So thank you everyone out there who has taken the time to, watch my old stuff, show it to people they love, and ensure that it lives on.
It just now kind of hit me, like you were saying earlier about how you didn't have the physical gifts that some of the other guys did. And I think maybe that's the reason why you resonated with so much of us, because so much of us could see ourselves in you. We're not, 6'8", we're not 350 pounds of muscle. You're a big man, but you're like a man who is a normal man, and maybe that's the reason that, because of that fact.
I remember when I would get off planes and you would see fans waiting, and there'd be a whole family with rock shirts, but they wouldn't approach him when he walked by. And then I'd walk by, clearly not their first favorite, but they would feel comfortable with me because I was just a guy, like I'm just a dude,
Mick.
Right? And I think you're right. I think I love the NBA playoffs, right? But I can't be one of those guys, like I was a semi-decent player until until I got to high school, and then I wasn't good anymore. But you can't watch it and say, I want to be
LeBron
James. I want to be Nikola Jokic. I love the fact what Jokic has done for dad bod guys.
He's killing him. What a guy.
I keep looking. I'm like, is there a hint of a deltoid? No, there's none. There's no muscle definition on this guy whatsoever. And he's just so good at the other aspects of the game. I heard he had the lowest standing vertical of any prospect,
probably
at 17 inches.
I could believe
and
that.
I was like, that's Foley territory there, but even so, I can't be 7 feet tall, right? But people could look at what I did, and first of all, they didn't realize I was taller than they thought. Most people thought I was around 5'10". So I was just like, well, I look better than that guy. I'm the same height as that guy. Like I could be that guy. They didn't say it with the idea that anyone can do that stuff. They realized that what I was doing, I was going above and beyond, but the body itself didn't take people out of the equation the way it used to.
But also then you got to realize you think you can, but then you realize this is probably one of the toughest men that God ever made.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Guess what? Like we can't be
He took
that.
2 days on Mick.
You know what I mean?
Well, I was with a few friends who didn't know much about wrestling, and Mike Tyson's name came up, and I said, Mike Tyson said I was the only guy he was ever afraid of. So they Googled, who is Mike Tyson afraid of? And up came up, Mike Tyson says the only man he's afraid of is WWE Hall of Famer Mick Foley. Thank you. It's the most dangerous man in the world.
Right.
I don't know if he's ever seen me actually fight. Mike's not going to have a problem, the fact that you could take a good butt kicking doesn't bode well for you. When you're getting hit with uppercuts and things like that. But I was pretty tough back in my day.
I remember former UFC fighter Forrest Griffin told me once, I met him at a fight and I was just like giving him, props. And he was like, well, the thing is, it's not that I hit that hard. He goes, it's just that I don't mind getting hit. And he didn't. He said it in a way that he enjoyed it. And I was like, that's coming. A dangerous man.
That's a dangerous man because you're in for a tough night. Yeah. And every one of his fights was exciting because of that. And but then again, he didn't, his was pretty short-lived, probably because he fought that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if it was short-lived. I mean, he was a main guy for 5-6 years.
He had a few years.
He had a few great years.
He
with some,
basically saved the UFC when they had the Tough Enough. The very first.
him and Stephan Bonner with that fight for the ages.
That was amazing.
I talked to Stephan after one of my shows, and it's like it's all people talk to him about. But fast forward to the present time, I bet you he's really happy. That people talk to him about that, because it's better be known for one thing than nothing, right?
Yeah.
And I think so there are actors who realize that, whether it's Adam West coming to terms with the fact that you are Batman, right?
Yeah.
Like, you are Batman. There are other actors, the guy who played Sheriff Roscoe P. Coltrane, the Dukes. He was at one time a really good actor, but there's a lot of good actors who nobody can recall, right? You would know a lot better than me, but I remember just doing a show called Warren the Ape that was directed by Sean Baker.
Right.
So Sean Baker, Academy Award winner, directed me in Warren the Ape, and it just dawned on me how many good working actors there are in Hollywood doing the unsung roles. Like there was this guy who was a prison guard. He was the warden. He was admonishing me and Warren for misbehaving in a minimum security. And he was so good. I'd seen him on, I think, 6 Feet Under or something like that. But I was like, I've probably seen this guy a dozen times and not even realized it.
Yeah, you run into that.
And Mindy Sterling, who was best known as Frau Verbissina, as Dr. Evil's lover.
Yeah.
She was in it, Scott! And I just thought Scott. There's so many talented people, and I don't, you just try to make a difference somewhere. Exactly. It's like telling a wrestler how to make a difference and how to get spotted would be as difficult as telling an actor do things to make you stand out. Yeah, not necessarily just what's best for the role, but it's difficult.
As TJ brought up, you aren't necessarily the mold of what companies try to push as, the guy, and you made it to the top of the mountain. I heard you say that you don't really make it to the top until Vince is a fan of you. Yeah. And there's so many unsung wrestlers, like unsung heroes of wrestling. Yeah. Is there any guys that you think fans or up and coming wrestlers should go back and look at and appreciate their work a little bit that come off the top of your head?
Sometimes I'll tell heels who come to me for advice. I say the best thing you could do, invest a couple hours in watching Bruiser Brody videos from Japan. No, you have to sell more than Brody did, and a lot of those matches he had, New Japan would never do, because a lot of them were double countouts, disqualifications. But just in watching how he got the most out of every little thing he did, because he wasn't actually a guy who had a huge moveset. Yeah. He did several things. Really well, really convincingly. And you were like, how does this guy have these? He would have long matches. So he's a brawling guy who could hang in there for 30, 40 minutes when he had to. Did an hour Broadway with Ric Flair that Rick said was one of his favorites, because it took Rick outside of his zone also. But he got everything out of it. He would watch what he did. I would call it appreciating your own work. You do something and you're not so quick. This is where I had some issues with the modern day WWE. When it was evolving, they insisted that you cover every single time you do a move, because you want to show you want to win the match. And I was like, I'd rather show that I would like to inflict some punishment. That's what makes someone dangerous. Wanting to win and be the best is not a moral lapse, right? Wanting to inflict damage and appreciate what you did while you're doing it makes someone far more dangerous. Yeah. And I think that's one thing that's missing, are the fact that the Abdullah, the Butchers of the world, and the Brodies who would come in for 4 to 6 months and just wreak havoc and leave, go somewhere else, are no longer there. If it's just a bunch of guys trying to be the best, I don't see a lot of room for settling conflicts. That's when the title becomes everything. Whereas when I was growing up, it was the feuds that meant everything. Even though Morocco and Snooka was technically for the Intercontinental Championship, it didn't need to be, because it was so hot. So I don't knock the current product very often because I like it. I acknowledge the guys are much more athletic and they have really good matches regularly, far more often than we did in our day. But I do believe that we're missing that element of danger that comes around with the killer heels. I won't put myself in the category of Brody and Funk and Stan Hansen, but I did a pretty good job myself at scaring children and women and some men.
Yeah.
So when I go and I do my events, I'll say, I know I scared the crap out of some of you, and you see people acknowledging, yeah, he did.
And I was going to ask you, what do you think is missing from today's wrestling? Is there anything that you're glad that it's gone?
Well, I'm glad the chair shots to the head are gone. I mean, you see them once in a great while, but you will never, and hopefully there's no one doing this on independent stuff, you'll never see a match like the one I had with The Rock with the 11 shots. Like, that was definitely overkill. So I'm glad
that was a tough watch.
Yeah, that wasn't a fun watch. And I actually did a watch along with some fans to celebrate whatever anniversary we just passed on that. It was actually a fun match up until the chairs.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of good dialogue on the microphone, Rock, of course, with the humor, it was really going well. And then that ending just was a little much, a little too much. Yeah. My daughter to this day speculates the reason that she doesn't remember going to matches, which she did often, is because she was, I don't mean to laugh, traumatized by being in the crowd that night.
That makes, and you could see it in her and your son's face.
Yeah, they were terrified. Yeah, they were really terrified.
And speaking of your wife, she did not like. I realized you took a beating, but what kind of beating did you take when the missus got a hold of you?
Well, she was at the show.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what. It was a horrific beating, but not so bad that I didn't take over at the wheel. Driving the family to the airport, and I wasn't even showered. Like, I had to get there all bandaged. I looked like Boris Karloff in the original Universal Mummy movie, and I was like, let me take the wheel. I'm not an aggressive driver, but she was having some difficulties in LA. LA traffic's insane, right? Yeah, and they're not so much rules as there are suggestions, right? It's a suggestion, stop at this light. I suggest you stop at this light. And so I did get behind the car with the bloody shirt, the gauze all over my head, and drove my family to the airport.
Wow. Were you still in your gear?
Yeah.
Man, there's a picture somewhere, man.
Now I look at it, I'm like, all right, now I see why I was refused service at a restaurant. Yeah. Because my wife and I tried to stop, before she was my wife, tried to stop at a restaurant on the way home from Philly after I'd had a barbed wire match with Eddie Gilbert. And it's like, what? I don't see anything here on your, I don't see anything about bloody shirts and gauze bandages.
Where does that say that? I have shoes on and a shirt. I have shoes on. So I deserve service.
It's a half shirt, but it's a shirt. That was just, there were often times where you would try to get out, like, you either got out right when the match ended or you wait an hour, or else it can be really difficult, And there were times when I was out of there, bleeding or not, throw some gauze on, get in the car, away you go.
There's legendary stories about you that, like, the guys say you were a little bit frugal, and and there's the cartoon of you carrying your gear in a trash bag and maybe not getting hotel rooms. Are these stories true? I've heard them from other people.
There's stories based in truth, and then slightly exaggerated. I did have if Hunter saw me laying down on the couch at the Jetport in Newark, it was probably because there was less than 4 hours before I had to go to the airport. And that was my 4-hour rule. Like, if I had more than 4 hours, I would get a room. Less than 4 hours, I would couch it, sit in my car. And now I look at those decisions and they seem kind of foolish, especially when your whole career is predicated on keeping yourself
fresh
running.
and healthy. And
so it is worth it to invest in yourself. Like, these days, believe it or not, I hate to, I'm going to lose some of my fans here, but I will pay extra for first class.
Ooh, as you should.
Sometimes. I'll weigh it out. And if it's like a few $100s, I'll do it. Reason being, it's not just the comfort on that ride. It's the fact that you're thinking about it. Yeah. And I don't want to sit in the middle seat and coach for 10 hours. That's, I won't do that anymore. But now the nice thing is I'm down like 97 pounds in the last 15 months. So coach now feels like first class felt to me. Comfort, because I do need a little room to stretch out.
Man.
But
You've earned it.
Yeah, I've earned it. It's not as harrowing, daunting as when I was 372 pounds going to the back,
Yeah.
I take a little better care of myself these days.
What would you do differently? Like, let's say like young Mick is just, you're 28, 27, 28, 30-year-old Mick Foley now.
Yeah.
Knowing what like, what would you do differently?
Want to see the one move I'd add to my repertoire? Yeah. You didn't think I'd come here to do wrestling moves. You ready? It's going to be quick.
Hey, go ahead, TJ.
I would block chairs that were coming in my way. I would. Yeah, that was one. I know, you just assumed, I think you cracked a bone at the top of my thumb. You wouldn't get that checked out.
Yeah.
Because we weren't making the money to get those type of things checked out. But gentleman Chris Adams hit me with a chair, and in protecting myself, I hurt my thumb. And I was only, I think, 23 at the time. And I thought, the message I received was, don't block chairs anymore.
Yeah.
And so I didn't. And that was kind of a cool guy's thing to do. But looking back, it's not that cool.
Yeah.
And looking back, the biggest stars of the era didn't do that stuff. Rock and Steve, they didn't take the unprotected shots.
They don't need it.
Yeah, they didn't need it. So I probably didn't need to go there as often as I did.
Now, that belt right there.
Yeah.
All right. Now, first of all, know you're a big fan of Christmas.
Yes.
Okay. Big fan of Christmas. When I was 10 years old, the year was 2001. All right. And I was killing it in the grades. And
Killing it where?
In the grades, school.
Okay, gotcha,
killing
gotcha.
it. Report card's great. Parents asked me, "What do you want for Christmas?" And I said, I want the World Wrestling Federation Heavyweight Championship. Right?
Is that true?
This is back when,
So let me get this straight. Your dad knows who I am?
Oh, yeah. We talked about it. He wanted me to ask you. He was like, ask him.
You said that one day something happened on the show and O'Shea said that to me and he was in the mid-sentence. I stopped. Wait, stop. He goes, what? I'm like, your pops knows me? And he's like, yeah. I was like, oh, wow. So I had the same reaction.
Because I told my mom, I was like, man, I get to interview Mick today. And I was telling her the stuff I was going to ask you.
Yeah.
And I mentioned asking you, how did you pull your wife with no teeth? And my dad goes, now ask him if he would pull her if she didn't have no teeth.
I know that's not fair. It's not fair, but it's not likely. Yeah, it's not likely.
And that's actually the first question that your pops has ever asked.
Ask Mick Foley. No contest. Yeah, that's the first Ice Cube question.
I'll tell my wife as soon as I finish this.
We're on episode 32. This is the first time his pops has chimed in.
There it is. But so I asked him for that title. And on Christmas Eve, they allow us to open one gift.
One gift, yeah.
And so I see the one shaped like a title. I'm not going for the ones shaped like books. So I opened that, and that is the exact belt from when I was in 4th grade. I've had it to this day. And
it's like his most prized possession.
It's my most prized possession. I broke up with a girl, and the two things I took from the apartment were my PlayStation and my belt. Those are the two things I can't replace. And so I need you to hit that up for me before you leave. There's only 5 people that I want on that title, and I'll put it up forever. But I want to know, my first night with the title. Tell us about your first night, laying your head on the pillow, champion of the world.
Yeah. Well, it was a little painful because every time I would roll over, it would pinch me.
You slept with it on. Did you really sleep with it on?
No, I didn't sleep with it on. There was a good story. If you don't mind me, I'll get back to.
No,
I do something real, sensitive, emotional. I want to talk to you about with the title, but I won believe it or not, the world light heavyweight title when I was in World Class Championship Wrestling. I was over the official limit, but I wasn't over it by so much that it was ridiculous. But it was like a little bit of a controversy. Is he really a light heavyweight? Because I was probably like 247 at the time. And so there was this big guy that used to walk us out. His name was Jim. He was a big African-American man, and we all, he would lay down his life for us. So we all really liked this guy. And he was walking me out, and some guy picks the wrong person to say the wrong word to that starts with the letter N.
Oh,
No.
And when I tell you this big guy started kicking his ass, I'm not talking about like metaphorically.
Yeah.
He was literally, that was the beating. He was kicking this guy's ass all over the parking lot. And I felt bad for the guy's son because no one should see their dad getting their ass kicked, no matter if their dads are racist or not. But hopefully there was a lesson learned. But the next day I came back to TV, and this old school guy named Phil Hickerson was all over my case because when the fight went down and I was trying to break it up, I was wearing my title belt.
Yeah. I'm the champion of the world.
And he would always ask me, Jack, have they smartened you up yet? Because he'd say I wasn't smart to the business because of the things I was doing. And then later on, he went to be on to be a radio personality in Central Tennessee. And he interviewed me about my book. And the first thing he did was, Jack? And I go, no, Phil, they have not smartened me up yet. But the first night with the title, it was a disappointment.
Really?
Because it took us about 2.5 hours to go from Worcester to Boston. I had a signing in Boston the next day. It was a school break, so they could have it on a weekday. And I get to my hotel room, and I was planning on doing a couple things to celebrate, planning on getting a pretty good meal from room service, and planning on watching a pay-per-view movie with adult themes in it. You know what I'm saying?
If you smell what the Rock is cooking.
That's a good way to celebrate, right?
Right.
And I got there, and I see the Blue Meanie in the lobby, and he's not pulling a Foley where he's sleeping for a few hours.
Yeah.
There's no room for him. And I go back, that's a shame. And I go to my room, to order the room service meal, the pay-per-view.
Got plans.
And I just think of the Blue Meanie forlornly, like I walked down and said, come on, not going to make you sit out here. So my night of the champion was spent like this. Well, a large man snored and farted his way through the evening, and I barely slept at all. So, no, it wasn't the greatest night of my life after I won that title. But it's gone on, to be one of the greatest accomplishments ever, and especially the bigger Dwayne gets.
Yeah.
You got him by comparison, right?
You got him.
Yeah.
That's actually just that, such a cool story because Karrion Kross, we were talking about him a little earlier before the show, and Chris Bay from TNA, who became paralyzed, but now he's walking, he's doing much better. We got to see him. But Kross did a benefit show, and he said people were thanking him. He goes, no, don't thank me. This is what we do. We're brothers.
Yeah.
One falls down, we pick him up. So the fact that for you to be on top of the world, you're now WWF champion. You're number one on the call sheet. This is your dream, but yet you still, something inside you remembered the hard times you had, and to not let the man stay down there.
Yeah.
Dude,
Well, I'm having this image now of when we went to World Class Championship Wrestling. World Class was based out of Texas, but they aired in like 120 markets around the country. And to this day, I guess the Von Erichs are like royalty in Israel because the World Class show was so big during that time period. But I remember we went to Chicago, and I didn't have a credit card. And one of the guys, I asked if I could room with him. He said no, because he was going to have some female companionship.
Right.
And so it's like 17 degrees, and I'm in the van. They had a van for us, and I've got like a little cloak around me, and I'm like, I guess I'm sleeping here.
Yeah.
And then Brickhouse Brown knocked on the door at the window, and he said, get your ass out of that van. and then he let me stay with him.
Okay.
So you remember these things, and you remember how you like to be treated versus how you don't like to be treated. And I remember the guys that went out of their way to make life a little easier on me, the guys who didn't. And I want to be one of those guys who make life a little easier. So can I take this time to point out,
please,
I'm doing this tour.
We want to talk to you about your tours too.
But as long as we're talking about, picking people up, there's only one organization in the country whose main purpose is to help out wrestlers in need, and that's the Cauliflower Alley Club.
I've heard of them.
Yeah, they do really great work.
Brian Blair.
Brian Blair's the president, and they just do really good things. It's a recognized registered charity. And so what I'm doing is every night when I do my one-man show, I call it the shirt off my back auction. Mm-hmm. So I usually have a flannel and a wrestling shirt. And, we got $1,300 2 nights ago, but the average price about $500, and 100% of that goes to the Cauliflower Alley Club. So we're up to about $6,000 so far, and I'm hoping to hit 20 by the time the tour is done. And it's not a fortune, but it's going to help some people out. And it's also maybe a signal, just a nudge to some of the other guys who did well to maybe help out a little bit. Yeah. But what I wanted to say about the belt, and I'm hesitant because it might sound like bragging, but it is one of the things that's most important in my career is I don't have my championship belt.
No.
And I had it. The lineage was Austin, Rock, me. And so I've got this title belt that smells like beer and mildew because Steve did the beer bash all the time. I didn't know where to hang it. And so it was just in my closet for a couple of years. And Sabu, who we recently lost, had some real trouble with medical bills. If you're Sabu and you try to, can you imagine Sabu trying to get insured?
Yeah.
Right? Before Obamacare, oh God, you take off his shirt. We can't insure this guy. He had mountains of medical bills, and Fumi, his name was Fumi. He did one of the magazines, Fumi Saito, and he had a good rapport with a lot of the American wrestlers, and he asked if there was anything I could auction, and I was like, I pulled out the belt.
No way.
And it didn't get nearly what it would have. It got like 1/10 of what it get now because they decided they were only going to make it available to people who were at the show in Japan. It wasn't like an online auction. Oh. But that to me, I can be shallow and selfish and all those other things, but I think I did auction my belt to help one of the guys. More than anything I did in the ring, I hope that's the type of thing people remember, you know? And so I guess Sabu was on record saying I did more for him than anyone. I didn't do anything besides that, but he never forgot it, He never forgot this. That's a big thing to have your title. I don't know if there's another WWE champion who doesn't have a belt.
Right.
And I'm glad to be that guy.
Yeah,
so I'm the WWE champion without the teeth, without the belt, without the socks. But I got the fanny pack. I got that fanny pack.
And more important than that, you got the love of and admiration of millions of us wrestling fans.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Man. We gotta
and then hopefully once they see this, hopefully once the E sees this, they'll get you another one of these.
It's not the same thing.
Yeah, that's true.
It's great to have the replica, but unless it smelled like mildew and beer, it's not my title belt.
We can work on it.
Yeah, maybe we'll find the person who bought it.
It stuns me to see how much the stuff is worth. There's a young man named Chris Giordano on Long Island. I met him when he was graduating the Henry Viscardi School in Staten Island for children with real physical challenges. So Chris has cerebral palsy, and he's got about $50,000 worth of stuff.
Oh my goodness!
that I never knew it was going to appreciate in value. You know? He's got the original Dude Love shirt. He's got
Was he on Most Wanted Treasures?
No, he wasn't on there. They wanted him to be on there, but they were wondering what the visual would look like of me coming into the home of a young man with cerebral palsy and taking his most valued possessions from him.
I guess that's
not a good look. So I go down, I still show up every year or two to watch a little WWE with him. And he's got the pay-per-view posters that I had, foam mounted. And they've got I had the juice at the time to go to every single person and get it signed. At the time, my wife and I had a gym, believe it or not, Foley's Gym on the Florida Panhandle. So we had these things hanging, including Vince McMahon's signature.
Wow.
And I'm like, just those posters alone with all those signatures.
And you just gave them all?
I gave them away. The gold and platinum records, hey, you want this on your wall?
Right.
And like you can't very well go back now and ask for it back.
Yeah.
Right?
Hey, remember that? Yeah, exactly. All right. Now, question that we got to make sure we get to. You know, we know you got stuff to do, but it's a question that we ask every single person.
By the way, we should point out that I would have been here an hour earlier.
Yeah, let them.
And I went to a different Imperial Highway. And I'm texting your producer. I'm like, I just passed the
address.
Yes, I said, there's nothing here. Like, I'm on the highway. And she's trying to talk me through it. And like, she's like, oh, we're in El Segundo. And so I pull over on MapQuest. I was like, I'm an hour away from El Segundo.
We made it work.
And do you know what it reminded me of? I mentioned this to you before we went on the air. Is I was like, hey, I'm sorry, and I explained what happened. Was Christmas Eve, I think, two years ago. I'm making 2 late night visits, Christmas Eve visits portraying Santa. One for Mickey James. Mickey had just lost her brother and her niece in a terrible automobile accident.
I remember that happening.
And I remember we had an ice storm in Nashville, and they're not used to cleaning the road. Not used to addressing that in Tennessee. So they just kind of let it melt. And I was like, Mickey, I can't even get out of my driveway. Like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it.
Jeez.
And then I thought about, what she was going through. And we had a little bit of sunshine one day. And I was like, I don't know how long it'll take me, but I'll be there.
Yeah.
And so I ended up being late to Mickey's house because I went to the wrong address for David Arquette.
Yeah.
And this is Tennessee, remember, right?
Yes.
Firearms are not just allowed, they're encouraged. It might be mandatory in some parts of the state. And all I could think of is like, I'm texting David and I'm like, okay, I'm here. Where should I go? I got the presents in a garbage can in the back. Because then all I do is I tell him 30-gallon garbage bag. I slip that into my Santa bag. And the appearance really magical, right? Because I essentially put on a performance without acknowledging there's an audience. 2 or 3 kids, David and his wife, and it's a really cool thing. The parents wake up the kids, and it's been explained to me that it's the combination of joy and a little bit of fear because technically they're doing something they shouldn't be doing.
Yeah.
And it creates a memory, a moment in time, like I'm saying with wrestling.
Create moments.
That, I don't have to be thrown off a cell to create a moment for those children and their parents, because the parents are always more excited than the children.
Because they know they're getting them.
And it makes them feel like children again.
Yeah.
But in this case, I'm like, David, I'm looking through a garbage can. I don't see anything. And he's like, I'm outside. I don't see you.
Oh, no.
And immediately I'm like, it's 1:30 in the morning, Tennessee.
Trespassing.
You would be within your rights
100%.
to shoot me. I don't think there's a jury in the state that's going to say, all right, you got a 320-pound man going through your garbage can at 2:00 in the morning. That's a justifiable.
Bro.
I did end up going to the right place and had a really good visit with the Arquettes and a really good visit with Mickey. So because of the ice, Nick Aldis was helping me out down the stairs,
Right.
And he's a big, I was in good hands, a big, strong dude.
Yeah.
And I turned to him and I go, I bet you didn't have this on your bingo card 20 years ago.
Absolutely not. But you made it here. And so you being here on NCW, we got to ask you the bar fight question. Now, the bar fight question is we put you in a situation. You're at a bar enjoying yourself.
Yeah.
But there's 50 dudes in that bar that don't want you there.
Right.
I need you to pick a team of you and 4 of your guys to make sure you're getting to the car.
All right.
So these are guys from any era, any
legendary
time, right?
bar fighters. Because I don't know if you know this, like the quick, easiest, cheapest publicity in the territories was to be on the police blotter. Like in Florida, they encourage guys to fight in bars because that was free publicity. Yeah. But the caveat was you could not lose a bar fight. You would be fired.
Bill Watts was big on that,
Bill
right?
Bill Watts, he was. Yeah, I don't know for a fact that Bill was big.
I mean, on the sense that I've heard, like, if you worked for him,
if you
got into a fight,
I don't think Bill encouraged guys to go out and get fights. But yeah, if you got in a fight, you were,
pretty much.
If you lost a fight, you were gone. I mean, you got to add Ming.
Even though he's the last one.
I personally don't have a Ming story because I wasn't out at the bars too often.
Right.
Stan Hansen told me in 1991 if you're married, nothing good can happen to you in a bar. And also, I like chilling out. Like I like my hotel room. I don't think of it as a cell. Like I read, I watch a movie every once in a while. I get to know my body a little better.
If you smell
Mr. Sacco, no.
what Mr. Sacco is cooking.
I didn't even know that kids, people use socks for ulterior. I had no idea until like 5 years ago. It's been said the toughest of them all was The Rock's grandfather, High Chief Peter Maivia. So go with those two guys.
Yeah.
Kurt Angle's not going to beat people's asses, but he will ensure that you don't get yours beat. What I mean by that is Kurt is a guy, Olympic gold medalist, he's going to tie you up in knots. He's not a striker, but he's going to put you in a world of serious hurt.
Watch out.
Speaking of world of serious hurt, I'm going to add exotic Adrian Street to that list.
Okay.
Because Adrian was so adept at hurting people seriously for long periods of time that Bill Watts had Adrian teach his kids some of that stuff.
Oh, yeah?
Because he was so good at it. And I'll tell you what, when I was in Montgomery, Alabama, where I lived when I was in Continental Championship Wrestling, I was so grateful to have Adrian there to show me the high end, like the ceiling for what human suffering could be so that I could better understand different levels of suffering. Because he had me in so much pain with a few of these moves that I literally no longer wanted to live. And in a state like, if you take away someone's will to live, you won, right? And it can be just mental. Like I knowing that he was capable of inflicting that type of pain would ensure that even if I did, Adrian's passed now, but he was a guy you didn't mess with Adrian Street even when he was in his 60s,
All right.
He was a tough dude. And I mean, that was what they did in the old days. They would teach guys how to spoon out an eye, stretch you, remove. To this day, I think that Tarantino got the scene in Kill Bill 2 where they step on the eyeball from reading Have a Nice Day. But I don't know if that knowledge was ever out there. I don't know if anyone had ever illustrated an eyeball being stepped on until I did.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I think Quentin took that from me.
Could
If he
have.
did, good for him. But a little acknowledgement would be nice.
That's Adrian, Ming, Kurt Angle, and High Chief.
High Chief, that's 4, right?
Yeah, no,
And
that's
you.
plus you. So that's the 5.
There you go. I like that. It's crazy. The Adrian Street, I'm sure you probably don't, because, he's a little bit
born
older.
in 1991.
Yeah. So, but the fact, exotic Adrian Street with that gimmick of the flamboyant, you're kind of not sure if he's straight or not.
Yeah.
But he's wearing mascara and lipstick, and he's got a valet, and you wouldn't think that this man, you wouldn't think that he was a killer, but I guess he was comfortable enough.
He was
to do that and know that he could still, tie somebody up.
And he was the first guy to sing his own entrance music. Imagine what I can do to you. It was he was like, I can tear a telephone directory in two. And then he'd go, imagine what I could do to you. And he'd blow a kiss. And these people in the South would lose their minds. But going back to WWE, you remember when Billy and Chuck really caught on as like the semi-gay guys?
With
like
Rico, right?
Yeah, with Rico Constantino. And they got over. And then the New York Times actually did a story. And the New York Times very rarely covers wrestling, They call them the accidental advocates. And then WWE made the call that they could not follow through on the wedding because the fans would never accept gay baby faces. And I was like, Adrian Street was androgynous, but it was like, if Adrian Street got over in the deep southern part of the United States,
in
doing
the
that
70s,
character
80s.
in the 70s, those guys would get over like gangbusters in today's day and age.
Absolutely.
So that was a missed opportunity for sure.
Mick, one thing we want to talk to you real quick is you're doing a lot of cameos right now.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Talk to us about
Well,
that.
I like the cameos. I feel like with the head injuries I've had, cameos really helped me stay sharp and doing the one-man show too. I remember coming off the stage in Boston and Chris Nowinski, who co-founded the Boston Center for Traumatic Encephalopathy. It's got a new name now, the Concussion Legacy Institute. But if I can continue to say Boston Center for Traumatic Encephalopathy, I think that's good.
Yeah, that's solid.
And he said, Mick, what you're doing on stage is the best form of exercise for your brain. And I said, really? He goes, you have stories that you've worked on, you're memorizing. You have stories that you're working on. You're playing off the crowd. It's like mental gymnastics. So I'll do these cameos. I try to make them good, right? I try to make them, because I've ordered 5 for myself, and I've been happy with 4 of them. And one of them, it wasn't that it was bad. It was just like I did not get the feeling the person wanted to be there. And I was like, all right, now that I know how that feels, I'll make sure I don't make anyone feel that way. And so I'll like have some takeoffs on birthday song. You get tired of singing "Happy Birthday" to you, and people know that you're tired of singing it. And so I was like, well, what if I rearrange some Christmas songs so they got, so that people know the tune, but it's something new. And I'll sometimes break out where I don't know the rhymes. Okay. And then I have to come up with freestyle while I'm doing it. And there was this one where I thought I could rewrite the 1961 Jimmy Dean song, Big Bad John, because they gave this guy a different name, but he worked, he worked in a factory, instead of a mine. I was like, every morning at the job, you could see him arrive. And when I was doing the song, as I was doing it, I couldn't think of the rhymes. I had to fold and go, all right, I've got nothing here. But I tried. And it's that constantly trying to make things good, seeing what works,
Making a
you don't
moment.
know what sticks until you throw enough stuff at the wall. And so when I do the cameos, I think people want to check out the past cameos I've done and the reviews. It's cameo.com/Mick Foley. And you can see that when I do them, there's no place I would rather be than in front of that phone trying to make a memory for somebody.
Well, dude, you've done a lot of videos for people. Something I want to share with you from 3 people that you know.
Okay.
And we're going to show you the videos now.
Wow, I need some socks in a hurry. I used to make fun of my dad for wearing loafers and shorts. This is not much better than that.
You're a hardcore legend, Mick. You don't need socks.
Mick, what's going on, man? I'm sure that many very well things have been said about you, but I'm going to hit you with this. You're one of the smartest people that I ever met in wrestling. Of course, that's not saying much because we get hit in the head all the time, so most of our guys are scattered. But you are one of the sharpest knives in the drawer, man. I appreciate every minute that I've had to absorb information from you. Congratulations on the success in your career. You hanging out with good company today. O'Shea got you. It's all good. Look forward to seeing you soon, brother.
Hello, Mick. There is no one in pro wrestling that loves to celebrate the legacy of Mick Foley more than me. First and foremost, thank you, Mick, for taking 2 unknowns, 2 nobodies, Matt and Jeff Hardy in the late 90s, and inserting us into your documentary, 3 Faces of Foley. We were sitting there, you were hosting it, we were chatting with you, and I know WWE higher-ups were going like, why in the world did you want to put these guys in your video when you could have chose anyone? And you did it because you wanted to give us a rub, you did it because you wanted to give us exposure, because you saw potential in myself and Jeff. And it did. You put us on a lot of people's radars following that. So thank you, Mick. We are eternally grateful for that experience and that opportunity with you. And on top of that, not only are you an amazing professional in the way you've made so many people feel, I'll never forget how I felt when you were thrown off the cage in Hell in a Cell, and the way you made millions of people around the world feel. You have entertained us. You have got us emotionally invested in you, because you've sacrificed your body, your health, and your well-being. And obviously, Jeff and I took a lot of inspiration and motivation from you for doing that. So thank you for sacrificing your body for our entertainment. We are eternally grateful. And I'm very happy to call you my colleague. I'm very happy to call you my friend. But I think maybe the greatest contribution you have given to my life is every Christmas, you make sure that my children have a direct link with Santa, and Santa reaches out to them. And that's all because of you, Mick, because you are truly a special and amazing human being. You are the absolute best, and it is my honor and pleasure to know you and call you a friend. Thank you so much for everything, Mick Foley.
I always say there's been very, very influential people in my life. Dusty Rhodes made me believe. Johnny Rodz made me tough. Paul Heyman believed in me. But Mick Foley gave me legitimacy. Mick Foley saw something in me that I don't know what it was, and he made me hardcore. Without Mick Foley, Tommy Dreamer wouldn't exist. He saw something in a young, good-looking, handsome, great-bodied kid and saw a vision of himself. Maybe he saw that when he was Dude Love persona jumping off the top of his house. But I love Mick Foley, and he doesn't get enough love and praise for his athletic ability, because I've wrestled him so many times and I couldn't believe some of the things that he was able to pull off at his size. And I'm also talking height and width. But Mick Foley's amazing ability to see stuff in people as well as help endorse them really, really is unheard of. His mind, how he used to think and say things of why you're doing stuff, and one of the best storytellers I've ever been in the ring with. I love Mick Foley, so I can't say anything bad about Mick Foley if this is a roast, but Mick Foley deserves all the love and praise in the world. And one day, just one day, we will have his last retirement match versus me in the first ever you have to pull the other person's t-shirt off of their body to continue to stay in this wrestling business. Mick, I love you. Have a nice day.
Wow, that's really nice to hear. Like praise from your peers, it never gets old. Tommy and Mark, what great guys. And the story that Matt is telling is when I did my first VHS tape with WWE, the Three Faces of Foley. I told the director that instead of just talking to the camera, I thought it'd be more meaningful if I was talking to two wrestlers. And he said, okay, who do you have in mind? I said, Matt and Jeff Hardy, who had not won a match on TV yet. And the guy looks at me like he's expecting me to laugh. He goes, okay, why? I said, I have a feeling these two kids are going to be big stars one day. The fact that I had to like fight to get them on my VHS is pretty telling about about what I saw in them. And I like to be right. I also like to be proven wrong. I love that. Like, hey, you proved me wrong. This is what I think. Go out there and prove me wrong. I think that should be an incentive for everybody in wrestling to go out there and prove people wrong. I'm glad Matt pointed out the link to Santa. Yeah. So when I had my hip and knee replaced, I was like, I need a goal. And I had my hip replaced in April of 2016, the knee September 2017, April 2017, September 2017. So my goal was to work on my handwriting until it looked like Santa's. So what I'm going to show you guys is the actual package that The Rock's children received from me. Go ahead and take that. Okay. It's got the nice list.
I'm sorry.
It went away. Oh, it went away?
I touched it.
This is a different picture, but different letter to one of the wrestlers. And that's my hand.
Calligraphy.
Wow. It's calligraphy that a child can read.
Right.
And,
that's amazing.
And you handwrite all this?
I handwrite them. Probably 40 a year. They take about an hour each.
You gotta send us this so we can.
Okay, I will.
Yeah, man, this is great.
The list is like a who's who of WWE Hall of Famers. It's Trish is on like her 7th year. Kevin Owens will be in there. I've been giving Kevin videos since 2012.
Nice.
So I do the videos, and I do the videos are really well done. I even flew in a deathmatch wrestler named Casanova Valentine because he's a talented artist, and he's built somewhat like me. As a personality, somewhat like me too, because we want to explain to children how Santa is able to complete all these toys. And he gives this very reasonable scientific explanation about how he doesn't move quicker, but he's able to slow down time. So it appears as if he's moving quicker. And then we do this 20-second thing of Casanova Valentine painting the train. He said it was the best payoff he's received in wrestling, was me flying him from New York to Nashville to paint a train. But I love the idea that I'm part of these people's traditions.
Yeah.
So there's probably, it's Edge, it's Trish, it's the Hardys, or just Matt. I haven't gotten Jeff on board yet. And there's just a whole bunch. Nora Jones has received Nora Jones singer Jewel before her son aged out.
Yeah.
And I had to fight the urge. I no longer do it to see total strangers and go, would you like a letter from Santa? Because now I'm home and I'm like, that's an hour-long commitment to a total stranger who just, showed up at my table. But I really I love it. I think it's more important to me that I be one of those guys who treated people well than it is for someone to put me on their Mount Rushmore or say I was among the best wrestlers. When Tommy was talking about the credibility, I did see something in Tommy, and my social media guy pulled up a clip of a promo I gave where Tommy didn't say a word, but he just stood by my side while I advocated for him. And I would say his career was like a little different after that one promo without any words. And sometimes you do need someone to vouch for you.
Yeah.
It can be really, and fans can tell when it's real and when it's not. So just to go astray here for a second, when I was in, I was doing a 6-week run with OVW, Ohio Valley Wrestling. And I don't charge Al because I know I can look at the mathematics of the room and they don't add up. So if I want to work for them, I was
going to say TJ reached out to Al, but he said no comment.
That's not true. That's not true.
So I come in and I do the 6 weeks of TV without any charge, but also it's understood that I kind of have free reign. I can do whatever I want when I'm there. So there's the current OVW Women's Champion named Sophia Rose. And she's a young lady who was paralyzed from a stroke when she was 19, had to relearn how to walk and talk. And so when she talks, it's clear that she's got hearing difficulty, so partial permanent hearing difficulty. And I saw how insecure she was about her promo ahead of time, pre-tape promo. And I saw that she was asking people to leave. And I looked at her and I said, and I get emotional when I say stuff like that. I said, your voice is not a weakness. It's a strength. And if it's the only thing I accomplish when I'm here, it's that I will make you believe that. And so that was the pre-tape. And then she went out there and she worked her heart out against J-Rod, who's their champion, who has a really bright future. I mean, she's a stud. And I was supposed to do my promo about the veteran Jack Vaughn, and I did that. But I said to Al, I want to call Sophia out. He said, okay, but why? I said, because no matter how good this promo with Jack is, it's just a wrestling promo. The moment I bring her out here, people know it's real. And they did know it. And I think if you can help someone believe in themselves, that's one of the, because I remember those people who were there for me, Robert Fuller, who was Tennessee Lee and Colonel Parker at a time when no one seemed to believe in me, telling me I was going to make it in this business. And so I'd like to be one of those guys. Yeah. And I love hearing from Matt and Mark and Tommy. And I'm so proud to be the Christmas tradition. Yeah. I made a mistake. I actually had I dialed the wrong number, and I dialed Kane instead of somebody else. On my Christmas list.
May 19th.
I said, Glenn, do you have grandchildren? He goes, yes, I do. Would they like a video from Santa? So purely from accident, Kane's now, you just made the list. Yeah. So that is something I like. I mean, I love the idea that people have a box with stuff and letters that I wrote to them or something the kids will be looking at when they're adults.
That's pretty amazing.
Muhammad Ali he had a quote, and I'm paraphrasing, but you embody it so much. If instead of selling myself, I'd rather get you to buy into you.
What a great comment, right? What a great quote that is.
Solid,
wow.
Dude. Solid. You got another one, man?
Yeah, so, Mick, before we let you go, I think this goes without saying.
Amazing.
You are now the newest inductee into the No Contest Wrestling Hall of Fame.
Oh, wow.
Here.
All right.
Cheap
Where's
pop.
the confetti? Where's the confetti?
Here in El Segundo, California. Right here. Cheap pop. So.
I might as well go all out as well.
Hey, let's all do it. Hey, you know what? Hey,
man, whatever.
So, you know what I'm saying?
Go ahead, TJ. Continue.
Come on. There we go.
Yes,
How about that? Like, bam.
I'm haunting this studio.
All right, Mick. So we're putting you in the No Contest Wrestling Hall of Fame. And, up next to your bust, there's a little monitor, right?
Right.
So in this monitor, we're going to put some of your matches to run in perpetuity. That's forever, you people, okay? Can you give me 5 quintessential Mick Foley, Mankind, Cactus Jack, Dude Love matches?
Yes.
That you would want to live forever.
Does Dude have to make the list?
He does. I mean,
he had a few good ones with Steve. Heel Dude came out. Over the Edge, maybe, but I would say Mind Games with Shawn Michaels in September 1996. Randy Orton Backlash, May of 2004. That's 2. Me and Triple H, New York City Street Fight from January 2000. So that's 3. I know which one I want to place number 1. Let me find another one to round out that list. You know, believe it or not, maybe a house show match I had with Vader that apparently is available to be seen, that it was filmed without any of us knowing. Because I remember running into a fan from the UK a couple of years ago, and he said, I was at that Manchester match with you and Vader. And I turned to my friend and I said, I can't believe they're doing this to each other at a house show. And I said, that's funny because that's exactly what I was thinking while we were doing it. I can't believe we're doing this at a house show. So there's a house show match for you. And then the one I would ask people to really look at, and it's the only, when I'm out on my tour, it's the only story I repeat from the previous tour. This is about Terry Funk, and I get to imitate Terry, and that makes me happy. I try to throw in a little Dusty, a little Terry every night, because it makes me happy. And if I'm happy, that's going to be contagious, infectious. There's a match I had January 10th, 1995 with Terry in front of 150 near-freezing fans in winter coats. It was my first singles, no rope, barbed wire, Japanese death match. And we tore it down because we understood that the Japanese media contingent was there and 500,000 fans were going to see what we did in 2 days' time. And I'll never forget, we went all out. It was more brutal than the Cell. Did some things that were questionable. Didn't get to see each other, let alone talk to each other before the match. And I don't know if it holds up from A to Z to watch it and say, hey, that was a great match. It does hold up, I think, as an example of the lengths we were willing to go to put this little promotion on the map. So I'd say that's number 1 would be that match with Terry. Yeah.
And you have Terry on your shirt. Let us know what does Terry Funk mean to you?
Oh wow! This is a shirt that Pro Wrestling Crate is going to have.
You can slide that out real quick, Mike, so we get a shot.
I love the shirt. They gave me one so I could do a little promo with it, and I'll wear this thing quite a bit. Terry was my mentor, and he was my idol. He was. I mean, we all borrow from each other. You know, there's a line that Bubba Ray and I always share, where if he sees me first, I'll say, or if I see him first, I go, you are nothing but a cheap second-rate Terry Funk knockoff. But as far as cheap second-rate Terry Funk knockoffs go, you're really good. And he'll say the same thing about me, which is, I mean, I put my own twist on things, you know, but I definitely borrowed from Terry, and I never got to be as good as Terry was. I never felt like I was as fearsome as he was, but he just loved it. To this day, I maintain that the greatest promo was ever given was Terry when he retired for good the first time in Japan, and he just used one word. Do you know the promo?
Yes, forever.
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 Mm-hmm. Forever. And you just kept thinking, there's no way he can continue to say this and make it meaningful. And forever. And he had the tears commingled with the blood. And I'll tell you how over it was. I was able to ride through the backlot of Universal Studios with Barry Blaustein, who directed Beyond the Mat. And as we're driving, I hear a voice behind me going, forever, forever, forever. And I turned around, and it was Eddie Murphy. Eddie Murphy, knocking out the Terry Funk Forever promo.
What?
And nailing it too. Like, I don't think anyone knows that as talented as he is and as great as his impressions are, that he does a perfect Terry Funk impression.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah. I'm gonna go watch some Eddie Murphy.
Now, can I tell you what Robert Fuller said? I'm being real careful. If I'm saying it could be racist, I probably shouldn't say it. But it's also complimentary. Okay. And so you guys be the judge. But he meant this as a third generation wrestler who'd seen and done everything. And here I am down on myself and coming from the studio, not making any money. And he goes, Jacko, you're going to make it in this business. And I said, why? He goes, because you've got the black fans.
That listen, 100%.
And I said, like, wow, I look like I'm under the learning tree. Like, why does that make a difference? He goes, they know.
Yeah, man.
They have been lied to and cheated for so long that they can spot something that's legitimate. And he wasn't saying I was going to be the guy who goes out and clears out a bar full of people, but he was saying that when fans looked at me, knowledgeable fans, that they were going to detect something different. And I've always been grateful for it.
Hey,
like I'm getting goosebumps now because listen, I'm grateful for fans of any walk of life, any color, any sexual orientation. I love it. We got fans all over the world, but I will never forget Robert Fuller telling me that, and then me realizing it as time went by. Like, we've got fans, and then we've got people who believe in me, not believing that what I do is like a legitimate fight, but they believe in me, and that was the black audience making me believe in myself. So,
100%.
It's pretty cool, right?
You can't fake the funk.
Yeah, you can't do it. You can package someone a certain way, but not to a very a knowledgeable consumer. Yeah.
Real recognize real.
Exactly. That's what that is.
Well, what a great way to end this with the Eddie Murphy story, and then the Tennessee Stud story.
Yeah, Tennessee Stud, right?
Putting you over, man.
This was amazing, man. Like I said in the beginning, this was a bucket list moment for us. When we sat out this podcast, we had our list of names that are like, the great white buffalo.
All right. I know we're supposed to end on a high note, but on my way here, I was told there was going to be a peanut butter smoothie waiting for me.
Oh,
and I don't.
Hashtag blame Don.
Wait a second. No, wait a second. It is here.
It's here.
We need that.
I'm sorry I created any friction.
I'm hearing in the back that it is here.
We'll take care of you here at the
Can
No
I tell
Contest.
you my rider on my shows?
Please.
All right, I'll tell you my last one.
All right.
That's Don Bowie with the fly in.
Look at that beauty. Look at that. And now I'm going to go and end up with the chocolate mustache as a straw here.
We need these moments.
I don't care.
Yeah, bro.
I'm wearing a fanny pack in public.
And the stash is fine.
I'm no longer playing by society's rules. Just to remind me of what we were talking about.
Oh, your rider. Your rider.
Yeah. An agent, I'm not working with the same agent, but 7 years ago. What do you want in your rider? I said, 2 bottles of water. He said, no, but I can get you this. I can get you that. I said, well, that's fine for them. I'll tell you what I want: 2 bottles of water.
Yeah.
And now this tour, I've added 1 low carb monster to it. Yeah. And when I leave, I want people being like, this is the neatest dressing room I've ever seen.
Yeah.
This is the least demanding person we've ever worked with. Because people only remember, it's just like wrestling. You remember the bad matches and the great matches, and everything else is it gets lost by the wayside. I think people remember the easiest people to work with, the toughest people to work with. You probably remember your best guests, your worst guests, and everything else in the middle. So hopefully I'm one of those guests you'll remember.
Dude, you're great.
What's on your rider?
So it used to just be, I used to I get a kick out of that because I don't need anything. Yeah. I'm here for 30 minutes, maybe 15. So I would, my rider used to be 2 left Twix. I couldn't do right Twix.
Hold on.
All right.
Should I take this call from Ginger Lynn?
Yeah. Sure.
Ginger, I'm doing a podcast with O'Shea Jackson Jr. and TJ Jefferson. Whoa, I like it. Can I call you as soon as I'm done here? All right.
Hi, Ginger.
Right. The guys say, hi, Ginger. Hi, Christy. Just a couple of, they love, wait. All right, you're on speaker now.
Hi, Ginger.
Hi.
And Christy.
We're both here wishing we were all together, just having the best time ever.
I mean, here at the No Contest Wrestling Podcast, Ginger, you would be having the best
time ever. I'll talk to you guys in a few minutes, okay?
All right.
Bye-bye.
Oh.
It's the way I roll, man.
That's amazing.
Well, this is a little life lesson. When people are surprised sometimes to hear I have friends in the adult world, they're like, well, how do you, is there a secret? I go, yeah. You think of what anyone else would say, and then you don't say that.
Don't say it, right?
Just don't say the D-bag thing.
Yeah, just don't say the D-bag
It's because
thing.
there's some really amazing people, that you meet in all walks of life. I remember my daughter asking me why one of my 8 guests at my Hall of Fame induction was an adult film actress.
Yeah.
And I say, no, I learn a lot from different people. There are all kinds of stories and backgrounds.
That same people make the world go round.
They do,
That's
right?
right,
Yeah.
I for one am a studier of game tape. So that's why I know.
See, this guy.
I gotta work on my craft.
Now we got the chocolate on the
Got chocolate mustache.
I feel like that was intentional for you.
All we need now is a funnel cake, right?
Oh, man.
I
Six
really
Flags.
don't
I miss
care
Six
what
Flags.
society thinks of me. Just
Yeah.
Well, when you talk about things that you're going to remember forever, I know I can speak for us that we're going to remember this moment.
Forever, dude.
Forever.
when
Remember.
Ginger Lynn called me.
Yeah, that's
That
it.
too.
That was the
too.
cherry on top.
And I'll be showing him some footage when we go off air.
Game tape. Game tape.
Because
bro.
man, we stay ready, so we ain't got to get ready. You know what I mean? That's the motto. That's
But
the
yeah,
motto.
you're always welcome back whenever you want, whether
Anytime
it
you're
be
in
Zoom,
town,
in
man.
studio when you're in town. There's plenty we can still talk to you about.
Little known story. I believe I'd only have 2 children if not for Christy Canyon, because when my wife was wearing me out, and I remember saying, no, I'm not having sex again. Like, I've had more sex in the last, ovulation period than I had in the first 25 years of my life. And I said, and she goes, are you sure? There's nothing. I said, there was nothing you can do to get me interested again. And then I walked into the room and she had the Christy Canyon VHS tape going. And I was like, I stand.
Yeah, stand corrected is the word.
This is Miss Colette. She did this for you. So in addition to being an 11 on the 10 scale,
Yeah.
She also allowed you to
tired
have
of this luck, bro.
We need her on the podcast.
Bro,
Man. We need the
I
missus
need
on
the
the
story.
podcast. Man.
Oh my God.
Well, look, guys, you can follow us and make sure you do
Tell them where to
on
find
all
us.
of our socials. You can find us on There's No Contest on Twitter, No Contest Wrestling Podcast on Instagram. This video and everything we chop up will all be on the Rich Eisen Show YouTube page. And we're going to get this podcast dropped in a few hours for you here, man. But this is
What's the website so they can see your tour dates?
Oh, realmickfoley.com are the tour dates. I'm in a lot of different states in the country. And then cameo.com/Mick Foley.
This has been the No Contest Wrestling Podcast. We'll see y'all next week, man. Legendary Mick Foley.
Man, thank you so much.
All right. Have a nice day.
Thank you, Jada Parker.